back to my homestead. Today I have harvested a little pile of plantains, or as I was taught to call it, podorожник. That's how it's pronounced in Russian. And podorожник means literally it's growing aside of the road or by the road or on the road. And yes, plantain can be found in anywhere where humans left a trail, right? So it's gonna grow by hiking paths in even a very well compacted soil. Plantain is very forgiving and it's going to grow there. And it's amazing because very often it is used by travelers to help to stop bleeding or to treat bug bites or bee stings, something like that. And I know in my family, my kids know it by Russian name, because if anybody cuts their finger or scrapes their knee and I quickly shout, somebody go get podorожник, because we're gonna make a poultice out of podorожник to apply to that area to help to disinfect, stop the bleeding. And it's so large that it can act as a very large band-aid, really. So podorожник, plantain, is widely used in my household. So I've decided to go in the back of my property and harvest some of my plantain before the goats made a big mess out of it, because once the goats are on the field, forget about it. You don't want to harvest anything from there. Even though plantain grows by the road, it doesn't mean that it's a good place to harvest it. Okay, you guys know my spiel, that it has to be clean, ecologically placed, and far away from the major roads, because once anything that runs down from the road is contaminated, it's toxic, and you don't want to harvest there. But if you guys go on a hiking trail somewhere, or you are visiting a friend who has a big backyard and you see these wild things growing, I suggest you pick some. So right now in the spring, they are very young, very small, and actually edible. Okay, they're edible. A little bit, they have like, well, obviously they're very earthy tasting, but slightly peppery, but actually very pleasant to the taste. So I harvested a little pile and I washed it. So you guys probably know my rule, right? So if I harvest, and I always harvest from a clean places, but still, if it's a tall plant off the ground, far away off the ground, where there's a little chances of dirt splashing up, then I don't wash that herb. I let it be just the way it is. But plantain grows very low to the road, and they grow in like little clusters, right? So yes, I washed plantain. Triple washed it, just to make sure there's no dirt, no bugs, nothing on it. And now I need to somehow process this, and I'm going to process in two ways today. I am going to make a tincture out of it, and you know my tinctures, they're super easy, and you guys know that I like to use fresh plant material when I make my tinctures. And the second method is I'm just going to cut them up and put it in my dehydrator to dehydrate for later use. Sorry, the door was closing by the wind. Okay, so yeah, so it's super simple. All right, so I'm gonna need a couple of things. Well, you can use a knife if you like, or you can use scissors. And I have these funky scissors that cuts in many different little slices right away, so it saves time, right? So I'm gonna need a jar, and I just have a mason jar with a cover, and I like to use some plastic cover most likely. If you don't have a plastic cover, you can use a metal cover, but always line this with plastic first and then put a cover over, because a metal can corrode and you don't want to do that. So I'm using a plastic cover. Obviously I'm gonna need my plant material, and like I said, I use fresh as long as it's clean and there's no water on it. And then I'm going to be using good quality vodka. This one is, what is it? I don't even know what proof this is. This one is potato vodka. Anyway, okay, so I'm just going to take the leaves and I'm going to chop them up and put them in my jar. Okay, so the tincture will be used after it sits and matures for about 6 to 8 weeks. Okay, and I like to chop them into like little chunks because the more surface area is exposed, the better it is for extraction of the medicinal properties. So what is it used for? It's obviously a good antibacterial property. So during a cold flu season, it's good to use because it helps with cough. It helps with bronchitis. It helps to like a mucolytic when it thins out your secretions, and it helps to cough them up. Okay, so but also it helps as a cough suppressant. I've read in some literature it calls it cough suppressant. So during allergy season, people who have a lot of runny noses, it can be used for that as well. So it is a allergy season right now. All right, so that what the tincture used for, but it can be used fresh. It can be used fresh as juice, so you can squeeze the juice out of it. How I remember growing up using it, and we still use it to this day. If anybody cuts themselves, we quickly take fresh leaves and chop them up to release some of the juice and to apply to cuts and abrasions because it helps to stop the bleeding. Okay, and it acts like a natural gigantic band-aid that just goes right over. And let me tell you, I have stopped some pretty serious bleeding every time we injure ourselves here in a homestead, and that happens a lot. All right, so I'm just chopping things up. All right, what else can it be used for? Well, you can make a salve, and that can be used on minor burns. I personally have not used it in such capacity, but I have read that it can be used in such a way. Also, it can be used for hemorrhoids. So for someone who is dealing with very painful, uncomfortable, bleeding hemorrhoids, it can be applied to hemorrhoids, external hemorrhoids, I should say, as well. All right, so we talked about the colds, we talked about the flu. What else? What else? I took up my book here just to kind of refresh my memory. We talked about the poultices, right? So, all right. So let me give you an example what can be done if you are out and about and hiking and you don't have a knife or scissors to cut up this plantain. So I have done this in the pinch. Just chew it up and apply it as a poultice that way. I know it's probably not the best method, but when you're in a pinch and you gotta do something and you don't have anything else to disinfect your wound with, like a surface cut or something, that can be done in such a way as well. All right. So bee stings, bug bites, it can be applied straight to that area, kind of scrapes. We have done it all the time. But so right now I have half of it is filled up with fresh material, and the rest I'm going to top off with vodka. Okay, so I filled it up with alcohol all the way to the top, and it was about half, a little bit more than half of my fresh plant material. So every day for the next couple of weeks I'm going to shake it just to make sure everything is covered with alcohol, but then I'm going to only shake it once a week, and it's going to sit in my cupboard for about 6 to 8 weeks. At that point I will strain it, and I'm going to store the tincture in a dark glass bottle with a little dropper, because tinctures are measured in drops, and that's how I'm going to be using it later when we're having allergy issues, cold, bronchitis, coughs, that sort of thing. All right, right here. So also I'm going to dehydrate this to be used in tea. So quick little story how much we can use of it. There's some literature that says that we can use, if we're using them in capsules, they do sell them as in capsules, 3 to 6 grams per day. And if we're going to be using them in tea, 3 to 4 cups of tea per day is safe to use. In the past, I have dried them whole, just like this, after harvesting them. And you know, it's a hit or miss as far as drying them successfully. Because if you don't have a dehydrator and you just want to dehydrate your herbs in a well-ventilated area, far away from the direct sunlight, sometimes it works. And I have dehydrated this in the past and it worked fine. However, we live in New England where it's super humid. So 1 year, actually, they did not dry well and they went moldy and I had to discard the whole batch. So now, from now on, I don't leave them whole. I cut them up and I put them on a dehydrating tray. On a dehydrating tray with a little plastic special mesh, so nothing falls through, and I put it in a dehydrator for a few hours, because it has different parts to the plant, to the leaf. It has firm parts, it may dehydrate a little longer, and then so you just have to keep an eye on it. But I'm going to dehydrate probably about for 6 hours and we'll see what happens. I find that if I chop it up in a smaller pieces, it dries faster and it dries more uniform, rather than if I leave them in big chunks, you know, the big fat chunks. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm just going to be chopping them up and putting them in a dehydrator. All right, so one more thing I wanted to mention besides the cold, flu, the runny nose, the bronchitis. Tea also can be used for sore throats. Okay, so I remember as a kid, we mama made tea out of it for us in the winter when we had sore throats. All right, so this is pretty simple. This is actually very enjoyable. I'm outside on my porch, sitting here in the shade under the umbrella, and all I'm just doing, I'm just gonna cut them up and I'm gonna put them in a single layer on my dehydrating tray. All right, so friends, I hope you are enjoying learning about herbs and how to use them every day. These common herbs that pretty much anyone I know have access to them. Okay, just be careful picking them in a public place where the dogs are being, you know, walking or something. Make sure these are clean places, okay? Because you wanna bring clean material home when you preserving your own herbs. Okay, this can also be found in herbal shops. Very simple, because it's so common and it's so cheap to obtain. All right, but friends, I hope you are encouraged to learn about herbs and be more self-sufficient when it comes to treating common ailments at home. Okay, on this note, I'm gonna say thank you for watching. Please subscribe and share with those who might be interested, and I hope you stay encouraged and try something new.